The Making of the President, 1968. Tonight, as in past years, Xerox Corporation and its worldwide affiliates are pleased to bring you the history of a presidential campaign. We the People begins America's ancient law. And every 4 years, testing the law by choosing a president, the people test themselves, who they are, what they seek. Never was this test more tormenting than in that year of passion and fury, 1968. Everyone saw the story of 1968 differently, but this is how it looked to Theodore H. White.
Some people called 1968 the year of the grotesque, and it was. Lunatic events hammered us, assassinations, riots, flaming cities at home, and a planless war overseas. Technocrats dissected us with computers' polls, analyses, and television colored and shaped every mood. And somewhere along the way, the old politics died, an era ended. The old politics had somehow given us the illusion of control. A presidential campaign was a year-long carnival of antic song parade, but it gave people a clear choice of directions. And when the ballots were counted, the people had chosen one or the other direction. 1968 was the year we lost that sense of control. Not only the people, but our leaders too. Leaders who tried to control the instruments of government and failed. Failed overseas in Vietnam, failed in the streets of Chicago and Washington, failed in the streets of a dozen ghettos. Passions bursting beyond containment by the old forms of politics we'd known for generations.
Dow Jones Industrials 860.15, up 4.23. Rails 229.58, up 0.93.
Americans took their enchanting land for granted. Splendor of cities that reach the sky. Spires of stainless steel. A surge of moving energy and color. Comfort and opulence, the envy of the world. And pride. For 20 years, their pride had cloaked the world. Americans believed only firm world order guaranteed peace. And they must fight wherever called around the world to guarantee that order. For 3 bloody years from the Pentagon, the hushed and guarded command center had guided such a battle in far-off Asia. By 1968, 500,000 Americans fought in Vietnam. 16,000 had died there. Each week, computers and statistics neatly balanced costs of combat. Billions spent and planes brought down. Enemy killed, prisoners taken. But how to measure cost of valor? What price the sorrow for such silent dead? Americans are told the effort is worth the pain, that affairs march slowly, but success is near.
I said it here. I said it earlier this morning to the members of Congress. We're making steady progress in Vietnam.
I am absolutely certain that whereas in 1965 the enemy was winning, today he is certainly losing. The enemy has been defeated in battle after battle.
Half-truths are sometimes worse than none. Devoted to his cause, Lyndon Johnson has counseled for anguished months and years with men who know, like him, how ominous grow the portents of this war. Yet between the government's inner worries and foreboding and what is told the people, there comes a growing gap.
They got a new word for it, credibility. But every president that I have known, the press has found the reasons to suspect him and to severely criticize him. Particularly after he had been in office a while. Some of them had handled it better than others. I'm sure I've handled it poorer than almost any of them. I think one of the real problems this administration's had has been the communications gap.
But no communications gap separates America from war. Evening and morning, the sight of war presses home. January 1968, the Tet Offensive. Suddenly, the enemy finds new strength to strike, denying all American tales of progress. Vietnam is racked by battle. Saigon is scorched by flame. Savage combat must clear the American embassy of raiders. The enemy in every clash is slaughtered, frustrated. But he scores his message on the politics of the year. This war is endless, its cost incalculable. A stunned new realism now frames the presidential year. New voices now are heard.
And the entire history of this war in Vietnam, no matter what we call it, has been one of continued error and of misjudgment. And many of us in the Congress followed patiently the word of what was called the leadership of our administration as the war was intensified and extended, believing somehow...
First to announce as candidate, Democratic Senator Eugene McCarthy has challenged Lyndon Johnson in the war. New Hampshire's primary is his first battleground, and there, a solitary troubadour of peace, he tramps through streets and factories, beseeching indifferent Democrats to repudiate the president of his party.
Governor King of New Hampshire just said that you're an unknown quantity there, and he doesn't think if you were to enter the primary that President Johnson would be embarrassed at all.
You plan... I'm not really prepared to dispute with the governor. He may know his state. I expect I'm an unknown quantity in the minds of many people, but I don't think I'll be quite so unknown by the time that the major primaries come around.
Though politicians mock his candidacy, McCarthy sees what few perceive. Here on these tree-shaded campuses, 7 million college students have swollen to a mighty campus proletariat, a new explosive force in politics. Hating this war, haunted by the draft, convinced that politics is theirs to shape, this year they mean to act, and New Hampshire is the place. From McCarthy student headquarters in New Hampshire, to every college in the country goes out the call. And first by scores, and then by thousands, by bus, by plane, by hitchhiking, the volunteers turn up. These students plan to turn the Granite State, and then the nation, against the president and the war. Dividing up the state by precinct, mill town, factories, they canvass, plead, exhort. New Hampshire's primary must vote this president down. A student fresh from Harvard Divinity School, Sam Brown, speaks as their leader.
I was very clear. My original motivation in coming here was the war. There's one guy that offers an opportunity to find, at least try to find a way to end the war, and that's Gene McCarthy, and that's why I'm here. Johnson's going to end it by sending over more Americans to die and to kill more Vietnamese. And Gene McCarthy offers an honorable and rational solution to the war, and that's why we're here.
For Republicans as well as Democrats, the winding roads and gentle villages of New Hampshire will be a battleground. Here, Richard Nixon must prove himself. Outcast from politics 6 years ago, he must erase his loser's image. Now in February, he arrives to start the long road back. No backroom management of delegates will convince his party he can win until he shows his muscle at the primaries. Listed in 6 contests, he cannot lose one. This first is critical.
There has been a lot of criticism of President Johnson. Some of it justified, much of it petty and unjustified. There are those that don't like his accent. And there are those that don't like his style. And there are others that don't think he comes over too well on TV. I know how he feels. But my friends, the issue in 1968 is not the Johnson personality, but the Johnson policies. And I say whether you look at America's record abroad or at home, this is not a time to continue with Lyndon Johnson. It's time for new leadership under a Republican president and a Republican administration.
As once again he seeks their votes, Hampshiremen study this long familiar figure. For 20 years, Floodlit, analyzed, denounced, cheered, Richard Nixon has perplexed Americans. Shy and inward turning, he nonetheless has cut his mark upon the past as a bitter partisan, scourge of Democrats, rash and intemperate. Years of defeat have now apparently mellowed him. Lonely days of solitary brooding have changed his reading of the nation's politics. In this harsh year of war and violence, he plans to preach of peace, of calm, of order, and hope the voters change their reading of him too.
I'm really the most difficult man in the world when it comes to a so-called public relations firm. Nobody's going to package me. Nobody's going to make me put on an act for television. I'm not going to engage in any gimmicks or any stunts, wear any silly hats, do something for the purpose of getting a publicity picture or the rest. I am not an actor. I'm not a good actor. I'm just going to be myself. If there is anything I do have to offer to the American people and to leadership as far as our view in our role in the world is concerned, it's the fact that I believe deeply in what I say and that I am myself, and I'm going to continue to play that role. If people looking at me say that's a new Nixon, then all that I can say is, well, maybe you didn't know the old Nixon.
The first to test the Nixon strength is Michigan's Governor Romney. A man of thoroughgoing decency, his call is to an old morality.
You know, we got to get this country straightened out and deal with this financial mess and inflation and crime and get it straightened out. I didn't begin to campaign until New Hampshire. Up until then, it was the Grapefruit League. Now the real season has started, and we're making progress.
But Romney bears a curse. The spools of television have printed on the public memory an early candid slip of tongue about Vietnam, which nothing can erase.
I just had the greatest brainwashing that anybody can get when you...
By the generals?
When you go over to Vietnam. Well, not only by the generals, but also by the diplomatic corps over there.
Headlined across the nation, this casual statement has been bloated and distorted. Tagged as the brainwashed candidate, his presidential image crumbling, the media cruelly show him as a clown.
Say hello to the class, George.
Glad to see you.
No, wait, that's no good. Loud, like you're happy to be here.
I'm glad to see you.
What do you say, class? All right, George. Come on, get going.
He runs a downhill race, gallant but hopeless all the way. Voter surveys report he cannot change the pattern cut for him. 12 days before the primary, he quits.
Goodbye. Thank you very much.
All through the year, Americans must strain the sound of politics at home from the nightmare sound of distant war. March 12th, New Hampshire votes. Nixon's victory, as expected, is overwhelming. But McCarthy tears all politics apart. Almost outrunning Lyndon Johnson, he shatters the president's prestige. War and peace have ripped apart the Democratic Party. Yet now complaining from his triumph back to Washington, McCarthy is to hear that overnight a formidable foe will challenge him for his splintered party's loyalties.
Senator Kennedy talked to you last night on the phone, did he not?
Did he?
What, didn't he? He told us he did.
Well, he said hello.
Did he tell you, did he congratulate you on this?
Yes,
victory?
he did.
And did he indicate that he was reassessing his position?
Well, I don't know whether he did or not. I assume that he was, but as I said, lots of politicians are reassessing their positions.
What did he say you feel that he had stabbed you in the back?
No, you talked to him.
Senator, this statement tomorrow will be your decision after this reevaluation you've been doing.
Can I just end it? Thank you.
Senator, if you couldn't help me...
Nothing, however, can end the questions pressed on him. This is more than just a senator named Kennedy. For 3 full years, the vortex of all political speculation has been the dreams, the plans, the purpose of Robert Kennedy. Wistful and pugnacious, haunted by past tragedy, yet echoing tomorrow's hopes, he is politics' most controversial figure. Millions think him ruthless. For other millions, he is a romantic symbol. But he is more than that. The thrust of all his thinking is the use of power. Power as an artist sees it, to shape, direct, create. From this, his dilemma. Power in America, he feels, has been abused by Lyndon Johnson, committed hopelessly to futile war in Asia. Their feud will be famous.
The question was, how about President Johnson and me? What about it? What are you trying to start a fight or something? Look, I said that in the past that I thought it was possible to have a coalition government in Saigon, but that doesn't mean it's possible here in the United States.
Where does loyalty lie? To party unity or to national purpose? For years, Kennedy has felt that to attack the president will wreck the ancient party of their heritage, perhaps forever. But now the war in Asia, the student surge, the upset in New Hampshire have already blasted his party wide apart. He must decide his course. An avid nation clamors for answer.
So after considerable amount of thought and after conference with a lot of my associates and people who have supported me and supported the Democratic Party across the state, after discussion with many of those people, after this assessment and this reassessment, I've decided to support the proposal for a new federal courthouse at Mineola.
Next day, again returned to Washington, he comes to hard decision, and in the Senate caucus room declares it openly.
I am announcing today my candidacy for the presidency of the United States. I do not run for the presidency merely to oppose any man, but to propose new policies.
Thus, on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, departing Washington for New York, the Kennedy campaign jolts into action. Unorganized, unready, his themes and thoughts half-shaped, he is assailed by foes to right and left. He must make clear what drives a Kennedy to risk the hazard of the race. After New Hampshire comes Wisconsin's primary. There, from their forlorn headquarters in Milwaukee, Johnson's leaders attempt to stem the insurgency. No loyalties respond in body or in spirit. Paid campaign commercials fall on unhearing ears.
Courage, compassion, wisdom, experience. The marks of a great president, Lyndon B. Johnson. Vote for him April 2nd.
But now, in March, his generals report they need 200,000 more men in Vietnam. These troops he sends to war are fellow citizens. Their warm and precious lives pledged to a cause that many of their countrymen wish to yield. Courage to persist is of the essence of a leader. Courage to stop sometimes takes greater will. A president must be at once commander-in-chief, yet voice of what his people want. Exquisitely alone, a president must weigh his duty and his conscience, the strain and endless agony. Decisions press on him. Diplomats and generals in council disagree on how to fight the war. A few weeks hence, he must face voters in Wisconsin, and every tiding to the White House predicts defeat. March 31st, 2 days before Wisconsin's primary, Johnson is to go on the air. Will he halt bombings? Will he talk peace? Or will he escalate, demand a further round of sacrifice? He calms the nation first, invites negotiations, pledges limits to the bombings. None but the closest few anticipate the stunning climax.
I shall not seek, and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
With this, he leaves. He leaves behind a bloody war, but also new schools and hospitals, great urban programs, a nation set on course to the moon, vast and visionary laws within whose outlines Americans will live for generations. For these, he gets but little credit. Cast your bread upon the waters, he once remarked, and the sharks will get it.
Spring was the season of the Democrats. And overnight, with Johnson gone, you could see them clear, and what you saw was disaster. The old formula told us that the Democratic Party was a coalition party, a rowdy, brawling coalition of labor leaders and machine bosses, Southerners and minorities, students and scholars. And now, in the next 3 months, the party was going to come apart. Kennedy and McCarthy were in full revolt against the policies by which the party led the nation. So it was obvious someone would have to speak for the party, and obvious, too, it was going to be Hubert Humphrey, not just because he was vice president, but because by then the party's policies had cost 20,000 lives in Vietnam. The party couldn't just shrug its shoulders, walk away, and say, "We're sorry." History required a spokesman. There was a cause. But no one expected, when Humphrey announced as candidate and spokesman in April, that he would speak in a voice so strange, in a country so deeply troubled.
Here we are the way politics ought to be in America. The politics of happiness, the politics of purpose, and the politics of joy. And that's the way it's going to be, too, all the way from here on out.
But few in 1968 are tuned to politics of joy. And as Humphrey tours the country in the spring, he refuses to enter primaries or fight for delegates at the polls. His muffled voice sounds no coherent themes. His years as vice president have won him lasting loyalties of party leaders, mayors, union chieftains. Such men control the delegates that Humphrey needs to capture the Democratic convention. Seldom does he show in public the warmth of personality that once entranced so many. His course is set another way.
People say, "What are you doing these days?" And I say, "I'm on a delegate search, delegate hunt." And it's really very interesting. And you'd be surprised. There's quite a few around. And we're trying our best to find some of them and to convince them.
George Hall.
Publicly surrounded by the old, he reaps the scorn of all the young, who will forget the 20 years in which his voice has been the conscience of the party. Forgotten, too, his blazing fight for civil rights. And final paradox, this man of peace is cartooned as a spokesman of unending war.
Well, we're going to say goodnight to you. Oh, wait a minute. Anybody else? Fine. Thanks a million.
The symbol of new politics becomes Eugene McCarthy. His constituency is the campus mass, the young, the educated who learn through him the new potential that is theirs. Graceful, lean, and easy, his cool, clean style breaks totally with the rhetoric of the past.
We had a report about 3 weeks ago, publicized, that the Defense Department, I think it was the Army, had entered into a contract with Douglas Aircraft to do a general research on the subject of Pax Americana. Well, this is the first warning. I expect their next releases from the Pentagon will be pure Latin. And at that point, they won't be any more difficult to understand than some that have been coming out in impure English.
Poet, scholar, mystic, aloof, he speaks a language rarely heard in politics. He sees America in the sweep of history, repeating Rome's mistakes, sacrificing happiness at home for dreams of empire and victory in Vietnam. Although he shares the goals of Bobby Kennedy, their battle in the open primaries across the nation will flare and clash of personalities. To overtake McCarthy, Kennedy plans a continental strategy. Open confrontation in primaries in Indiana, Nebraska, Oregon, South Dakota, California. To confront the more elusive Humphrey, he must sharpen the party's sense of crisis.
One of my major opponents says that we should have the politics of joy and the politics of happiness. I want the politics of hope, because I think that we can do better in this country. And I don't think we can say that we're joyous or that we're happy if 590 Americans are killed in Vietnam last week, and if we have rioting in our nation's capital. I think that we can do better.
As April turns to May, the Kennedy campaign becomes a flare that people crowd to watch. Part is magic inherited from his brother, but more comes from a passion which ignites the crowds. These crowds, he hopes, will convince old-fashioned politicians now bound to Humphrey that he alone can save the party in November.
The fact is that some of our fellow citizens have turned against our society and turned against our government. People perhaps that you do not see, people that perhaps you do not come in contact with. Only 40% of the men that live in the ghetto have jobs that pay more than $60 a week. How can you support a family? How can you bring up children in dignity? But they feel that their children can't get a decent education? Do they want to accept that?
This passionate concern alarms the comfortable. But where minorities gather, above all in the ghettos, the blacks and underprivileged see Kennedy as liberator.
Robert Kennedy is the only man on the current political structure that can do the job that we need done.
Is there a second choice?
There is no second choice as far as we're concerned.
All politics is a dialogue between the leader and those led. As weeks wear on, a thoughtful Kennedy absorbs the feeling of the land. He senses violence in the air. The party which he hopes to turn against the violence of war must turn as well against the violence at home. The same courage that has led him to his breach with Johnson now makes him break with liberal dogma too.
I don't think we can tolerate violence. I don't think we can tolerate lawlessness, and I don't think we can tolerate rioting in the United States. I was the chief law enforcement officer of this country for 3.5 years, so I know how important it is that we abide by the law, and I intend to enforce that law if I'm elected President of the United States.
Somebody in the house.
What street?
They're in the house.
What street?
Richmond.
Violence, law. Kennedy touches nerve ends.
We have the police on the way, ma'am.
Please, I got a baby here. Please, please.
Madam, they're coming. They're coming.
Such screams in 1968 are part of politics. They ring out far beyond such centers of police control. Rape, murder, mugging, arson burst from crime statistics into city streets to shape a new environment of fear. Politicians call the issue one of law and order, but it is more than that. The decade of the 60s has seen so great a rise in violence, no single phrase can cover it. A new appetite for drama now feeds on private shock or shame or tragedy as public entertainment. Each city nightly awaits an item of excitement. The constant sight and sound of savagery eat like acid at our culture.
I understand the girls had scarves around their neck. Would this indicate that they may have been choked with these scarves?
We believe it. It has all the appearance of strangulation.
It's been very hard on you, Mr. Borelli.
It's hard on any parent.
Our children are just separated from us, and they're home with God. And they'll be home with us again one day.
Was he home this week?
Yes, he was.
How about just stand? Why don't you let her just stand still and talk to us?
Sure.
Can't we just stand? Well, we want to know about your son.
The doorbell rang. I answered it, and 2 men with guns grabbed me, pushed me in, and closed the door.
Drop the mics a little.
While random violence baffles and frightens all, even more disturbing are voices praising bloodshed as a form of politics.
But I say violence is necessary. Violence is a part of America's culture. It is as American as cherry pie.
The rage of blacks bursts from the past. A century before, Abraham Lincoln foretold the future. Now, when by all these means, said Lincoln, you have succeeded in dehumanizing the Negro, when you have extinguished his soul and placed him in darkness like that which broods over the spirits of the damned, are you quite sure the demon you have roused will not turn and rend you? In the climate of the 60s, the contagion of violence begins to sweep impatient ghettos. Though the federal government has strained with every effort for half a decade to cure injustice, the long-delayed and hasty effort cannot now quench a fury rooted in 3 centuries of want and hate. Our cities flame, troops patrol their streets, and summer season in America becomes a time of trembling, a carnival of looting, burning, desolation. Such plumes of smoke become the signature on our greatest failure. Through all these years of turmoil, the symbol of peaceful reconciliation between the races is Martin Luther King, spokesman of nonviolence. The black man's champion, his name is emblem on a pilgrimage of hope. In April 1968, his convictions have led him fearlessly to Memphis, Tennessee. His last night.
We've got some difficult days ahead. A long life, longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
The next day, struck by white violence, Martin Luther King is dead. And Black Fury retaliates with violence to avenge the spokesman of nonviolence. 100 cities rage with riot. 39 die. 20,000 are arrested. 50,000 troops must march to stop them. Nowhere is the grotesque nature of this year's politics more vivid than in Washington. For the first time since the Civil War, soldiers must defend the Capitol. Machine guns turned upon Americans whose laws no longer bind. Barely a mile from Washington's riot center, the archives of the nation enshrine its Constitution. But 1968 has made of it a riddle. The Constitution encases in our fundamental law the promises that free men make each other. First of these pledges is that government must ensure domestic tranquility. But the makers of the Constitution also wrote another pledge, that the rights of protest and assembly be unrestrained. Thus, a contradiction. Which pledge prevails in time of trouble? How far can government go in permitting protest before it betrays the promise of tranquility? None point the contradiction sharper than the students. The blacks revolt against the past, against injustices that laws have failed to cure. But students stretch the right of protest even further. When conscience and the law conflict, they ask, what then? The unexplained, unwanted war in Asia is for many critical. Some willingly accept the penalties of law and burn their draft cards.
Now, as never before, the need for all forms of anti-war and anti-draft activity is pressing.
Harcourt Kleinfelder.
Bill Dowling.
Steve Hanning. Peter Pfeiffer. Simon Sullivan.
This is peaceful protest, but others in their self-righteousness believe their new morality condones intolerance, believe that violence is the quickest way of solving grievances against authority.
We are Columbia. We are Columbia. We are Columbia.
Seizing buildings, using force, in May of 1968, a handful of students at Columbia University give the nation a bloody foretaste of the turbulence to come, in months, perhaps years ahead.
Then a communist 60-millimeter mortar hit the lip of the bomb crater, injuring 10 to 14 men inside. The crater then became a makeshift aid station. 1 Marine was killed and 20 wounded in this action. When it was over, the bodies of 21 enemy soldiers were found, evidence that there may still be some heavy fighting ahead around Quezon.
The season's Democratic primaries now crest in California. As schools let out, students by the thousands stream west to join the McCarthy-Kennedy contest.
Let me personally welcome you to California and thank you all very, very much for what you did in Oregon. I really appreciate it. Oregon!
Newcomers now seek from seasoned veterans the inner lore of overnight campaigning.
All my clothes are dirty. I've got 2 suitcases full of dirty clothes. When do I do my laundry?
Recovering from defeat in Indiana and Nebraska, McCarthy has beaten Kennedy in Oregon. His tested student leaders pour on the heat. If they can shatter Kennedy in California, they can eliminate him from the race entirely. As the clash heats up, the bitterness of the 2 liberal rivals grows.
He said that if he does not win in California, that he would I think he said this clearly, that he would no longer be a candidate, that he would drop out. His present posture is a little bit, well, as I read it, and I may be late in the campaign, you sometimes become a little more harsh in your judgment of your opponent than you do early in the campaign. It's as though he said, I will hold my breath unless you vote for me. And I don't think anyone should be moved to vote for either him or me on the grounds of whether we'll be unhappy or not as a result.
It's the 30th of May, I'm gonna ride all the way on the train through my home, California. And I hear people say all the way with RFK on the train through my home, California. And the train has a dream for the great San Joaquin. Can you hear what this song tries to tell you? As the train passes by, sing a dream never dies, like the grass of my home, California.
Has Senator McCarthy been to Turlock? Has he eaten a Turlock turkey? Has Vice President Humphrey been here? Has he eaten a Turlock turkey? Has he eaten Turlock peaches? Have they eaten Turlock grapes? That's what I thought. I have.
Exhausted by his 10-week sprint, Kennedy barnstorms from north to south. June 4th is primary day, the judgment of the voters. Though polls now show him out ahead, he will not pause. Up with the dawn, long after dusk, he tries to score his cry upon the conscience of the state. Evening, June 4th. At McCarthy headquarters in Los Angeles, his volunteers misread the first inconclusive reports of scattered precincts. Elation sweeps them.
Mr. Huntley and Mr. Brinkley made a projection that McCarthy would win.
6 miles away at the Ambassador Hotel, the Kennedy volunteers likewise gather. Tonight can be the breakthrough, close of the first chapter in an epic that will end in Washington. And shortly after 9, as the results surge in, their dreams seem close enough to touch. Upstairs from his private 5th floor suite, Robert Kennedy now emerges. The results are clear enough for him to claim his victory. Though other problems may cloud the weeks ahead, tonight is time for celebration. Downstairs through a hotel kitchen, he makes his way to thank his followers. As Kennedy mounts the platform, all the nation tunes up its television sets to watch the climax of the drama. So too do McCarthy students at the Hilton. Passion and scorn still move them as they watch this rival they have battled from Indiana through Nebraska, from South Dakota to California, now rise to seize a cause they feel is snatched from them.
My thanks to all of you, and now it's on to Chicago, and let's win there. Thank you.
And so he leaves. His jubilant friends have planned a victory party, but the madness of the year has planned another ending.
There is no confirmation, repeat, that Senator Kennedy has been shot. That is not confirmed.
At McCarthy headquarters, the students who sought in politics the way to peace are stabbed by truth.
They don't know who's been shot.
And as we get more definite details, we'll bring them to you.
If you do not leave the room, we cannot get medical aid to the senator. Now, would you please stand and cause confusion?
What? Kennedy has been shot.
Time is to help clear this room. Are there any more doctors? What's he shot? get medical aid for the senator. Please clear the room and proceed to the exits. Any more doctors in the house? Ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to clear this room. We have an emergency. Would you clear the room, please? Please leave the room.
Let me,
Somebody stop Robert Kennedy. There's
This is Drinkwater.
Please, we need you immediately.
You were there, you saw what happened. What happened?
I'm sorry, I can't make any comments.
Please, somebody help us.
Would you please clear the room, please, so that we can bring medical attention to the senator? Please clear the room.
As you noticed, the aide to Mr. Kennedy would not give a report to CBS correspondent Terry Drinkwater. We do have a quote from our reporter on the scene. Rick Davis is on the scene. They don't know at this point who has been shot, but here is a quote from one of Kennedy's aides, Mr. Smith, and it went like this. If you don't leave the room, we can't get aid to the senator. So we must assume that the senator was involved in that shooting fracas at the Ambassador Hotel. Someone has been shot. A doctor has been ordered.
The very best thing that you can do is to leave the room and find you indicate to me what happened.
I'm sorry, I can't get any information out.
Then there came a pause in the year, as if the nation were trying to catch its breath after the demented spring. But politics had to go on, a president still had to be chosen, and so in the hush after Robert Kennedy's death, our attention shifted from Democrats to Republicans. The nation's torment of spirit had to be reflected in that party too, and of course it was. Suddenly, there were two new candidates challenging Nixon. Rockefeller, the liberal, Reagan, the conservative, both of them very formidable men, but so far apart in philosophy that their clash threatened to disembowel the party in a repeat of the disaster of 1964. Rockefeller and Reagan had shilly-shallied all through the spring months while Nixon was sewing up the delegates. But now, in June and July, they came on like late sputtering fuses, and if the fuses caught, explosion was all but certain at the Republican convention coming up in Miami on August the 5th.
Propelled by the spring crisis, Rockefeller spurts into the race. Few governors have a more splendid record than New York's Rockefeller. But this record appeals to ordinary people more than party regulars. Through 45 states, he crusades for liberal, aggressive leadership. Though thousands cheer, what Rocky needs are inside delegates, not voices in the street.
This is one more example that the old politics isn't good enough, and what we need is new leadership in America.
Such delegates, however, have bitter memories. This was the man, they feel, whose clash with Goldwater wrecked the party in '64. They scrutinize him warily. Nixon is safe. Rockefeller may reawaken passions best left untouched.
Why you're here, it's why I'm here.
Of equally intense but opposite conviction is California's Ronald Reagan. Reagan twangs the heartstrings of the right. In the aftermath of the spring's violence, his inflexible call for law and order gives sudden force to his unannounced campaign.
But the revolutionaries here at home that we're so tolerant of with our permissiveness, their cause is not freedom, it is anarchy. And their aim is not to build a nation of laws, but to create a condition of tyranny. Tyranny of the mob, where might makes right and no man is safe in his own home. Not for them a nation under God. They've decided that God is dead.
Reagan's strength lies in the South. If his belated effort can snare 300 Dixie delegates, then these, combined with Rocky's Northerners, can frustrate Nixon on the first ballot and throw the convention at Miami Beach into cataclysmic clash. But Miami Beach was not conceived as setting for a cataclysm. Its luxuries and comforts, its pools and gaudy pleasure palaces will greet Republicans with soft indulgence from reality. Sheltered from the shrill of sirens in the night, a soothing languor settles over delegates. His party's mood has been well read by Richard Nixon. A country tired of shrieks and screaming has known excess of passion. We have a country on the verge of nervous breakdown, say his lieutenants at Miami. We don't want to add to it. Rockefeller's strategy is simple. First, to persuade the party his strength with liberals and Democrats is their best chance of winning in November. And next, by force of personality, to chip away at Nixon's delegates one by one. He calls the game erosion. This game depends, however, on his unwritten alliance with Reagan. Announcing open candidacy, Reagan now speeds from caucus to caucus. If Reagan can persuade his Southern friends to break their prior pledges to Nixon, the convention will come apart. Though Nixon claims far more than the 667 delegates needed to nominate, Reagan and Rockefeller insist between them they can slash that figure to 580 and break the hammerlock.
And I've believed all this time that it's going to be an open convention.
Nixon's spring strategy has won 6 open primaries. He holds the center, twists no arms, spreads balm and calm. These Republicans are citizens of Main Street. To men and women of middle America, Nixon is the middle road.
But most of all, I want her to be grateful, as I am grateful for every day of my life that I spent in the United States of America.
Oratory drones on and on. Platitudes cascade like waterfalls. No one planned this tedium, but these delegates have no desire to rock the boat. In the drowsy passage of the days, the sparks that loosed Republican furies 4 years before expire. High above the waters, their command post a solarium, Nixon's chieftains, unflustered by the raiders of right or left, count and chart their votes. Twice a day, lieutenants in all 50 states report the mood, the inclination, the shift of every delegate. With equanimity, they await the roll call Wednesday evening, August 7th.
Alabama, 26 votes.
Alabama cast 14 votes for Dick Nixon, 12 votes for Ronald Reagan.
3 miles away in his 19th floor suite, Richard Nixon, his family and friends keep score.
For Mr. Nixon, 3 votes for Governor Rockefeller.
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire is proud to cast its 8 votes for Richard M. Nixon.
We're one up. One, there, we worked for those. That's where it all began.
Right.
National,
There are 30 votes in Wisconsin.
this should put him across.
Who does it? MacGyver? MacGyver.
Good, he did, if he really deserves it. He worked his tail off.
Crowning.
I'm glad a primary did.
Wisconsin is proud to cast its 30 votes for the nominee of this convention, Richard M. Nixon.
No, sit down, get to work.
As Republicans on the floor cheer their candidate, the night's chief loser, Nelson Rockefeller, telephones the victor to pay respect.
Well, I think that we're all fortunate in our families. They all campaign good. And it's hard work for him, isn't it? I know that Happy seems to enjoy it, though. She's had some great shots. Yeah. She's been you're good to call. Yeah. Good. Bye. Bye. Thanks. Thank you. This, you mean? It was nice of him to call. Couldn't have been nicer. He said I gave you a great fight. But he said Ron didn't come through as well as he thought he would.
Next day, once again, his party's leader. Departing for a stay in California to plan his final thrust for power, he abandons national attention to Democrats. Chicago, second city of the land, for over a century, favored convention city of American politics. Burly, brawling, building, Chicago was a town where muscle counts. Now for Democrats in August, the city puts out a welcome. Conventions are its business, yet for this one, Chicago has taken special care. The rumble of spring violence has forecast trouble. The convention hall is fortified, rigged by catwalks patrolled by riflemen. Protest is in the air. Police and National Guard are mobilized. Every entry is guarded by electronics, the delegates themselves subjected to humiliating scrutiny. For generations, delegates have gathered thus. Part carnival, part history, part frolic, part grueling business, conventions are a unique invention of American politics. Such delegates, officials, bosses, scholars, farmers, housewives, chosen by the people of their state, theoretically deliberate to choose a leader. Each casts one vote, but not all are equal. Some are more equal than others. In Chicago, Mayor Richard Daley is most equal of all, autocrat of his city, master of its troops, symbol of all the old in politics, when men like him collectively dictated choice of presidents. Already in closed sessions, this frozen past is breaking up. The Credentials Committee will recommend the party change completely the way delegates are chosen and controlled. Will lay down guidelines that doom this style of politics for the future. But elsewhere in Chicago, the challenge to the past is more immediate. Student anger at the war has gathered thousands to hear new prophets of protest. Chief strategist is David Dellinger.
Our position is that whoever the candidates are and whatever the platforms, that we must stay in the streets and stay in active resistance, or else there will be no peace, either in the ghettos or in Vietnam.
The chief street tactician is Tom Hayden, student leader.
But you're going to march anyway.
Are you expecting trouble?
We expect to march.
What does
We
this...
expect trouble all the time.
In the spirit of summer holiday, young people pouring into Chicago rehearse demonstration tactics to make their protest vivid. These good-willed innocents pray for peace. Some come out of conscience, some are simply curious. Others are fantastics come for frolic, but they can be used for other purposes. They can be made a mass to thrust against police, and then a mass of anger if police are stupid enough to draw first blood. McCarthy's students are also here. Warned by their leaders against street violence, they aim to upset this convention by persuasion, not muscle. Their game is called St. George and the Dragon, and McCarthy is St. George. The enigmatic Dragon Slayer is, however, more interested in cause than candidacy. Arriving in Chicago, his purpose is to force the party's platform to repudiate the war, rather than to slay the dragon, his old friend Hubert Humphrey.
Hello there. How are you? Nice to see you. Thank you. Good as well. Say, good to see you. Great.
Humphrey all but has the nomination locked, but he knows the party he hopes to lead is desperately divided by one great issue: war. On this issue, Humphrey's liberal friends have all abandoned him. Senator George McGovern has swept up Bobby Kennedy's followers. Now, as a new candidate, McGovern pleads before the Platform Committee.
The most compelling reason for ending this war is that it is a moral disaster for America and for the people of Vietnam. It's my judgment.
Johnson dominates this Platform Committee, and Humphrey goes along with administration policy.
4 years ago.
Thus, secretly in Chicago, peace leaders gather. They will not accept the majority war plank of the Platform Committee. They insist all bombing of Vietnam must stop at once. American troops must be withdrawn. They plan to offer a minority plank, oppose the platform committee on the floor of the convention in open fight. Yet even while they plan in quiet, the issue has been boiling up outdoors. Over 3 full days, the echo of debate within the halls has been resounding in the streets, where demonstrators dramatize it for the cameras.
Stop this damn war! 1, 2, 3, 4. Stop this damn war! 1, 2, 3, 4. Stop this damn war!
The third thing that Tom Hayden thought would come out of this is that it would heighten people's political consciousness. And I think this is happening to us all here. But a consciousness which is really heightened is a consciousness which takes action.
The action spreads on Monday and Tuesday. As enemy flags are fixed to war memorials, the issue of war is joined to law and order. Protesters claim this is legitimate dissent. Police say no.
You are on my property which you are defacing. If you do not leave, you will be subject to arrest.
All through Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, houseboating off the Keys of Florida, a tranquil Richard Nixon leaves center stage to Democrats. In Chicago, his rival Humphrey is a powerless witness to events he cannot control. Johnson controls the Vietnam plank. Mayor Daley controls the streets. On Tuesday night, Humphrey impatiently awaits Wednesday's balloting. When finally named presidential nominee, he can speak for himself. Wednesday noon, the delegates gather for debate. Will they repudiate the leadership of a nation at war? Party leaders clash. The minority plank is clear. Withdrawal now. So too is the majority administration plank. Continuation of combat until negotiations reach agreement without surrender. On the one hand, peace. On the other hand, perspective of continuing bloodshed. Late afternoon, the convention votes. The verdict comes.
And the minority report is not agreed to.
The minority chants its protest. Dusk is falling when, in the streets, the demonstrators hear their cause is lost. Now they are told they must march upon Convention Hall where nominations for the presidency are about to begin. But Mayor Daley's police and National Guard insist they must not. Nominations go on within. Carl Stokes, mayor of Cleveland.
To second the nomination of the next president of the United States, Cuban Frank Humphrey.
But television has given politics a new dimension. Now it shows the delegates and nation what has been happening in the streets. Goaded to fury, police have gone berserk. Wanton brutality replaces rule of law.
McGovern as President of the United States, we wouldn't have to have Gestapo tactics in the streets of Chicago.
As they learn what has happened, delegates are swept by currents of cross fury.
How hard it is to accept the truth.
At their command post, Humphrey's captains have planned a classic peaceful victory. Yet suddenly old traditions seem obsolete. As roll call begins, they know they have the inside votes. Their man will win his nomination. But action in the streets will cut in half its value.
35 votes for Hubert Humphrey, 8 votes for Eugene McCarthy, and 1
In his suite, Humphrey with his friends watches the hollow triumph. No mandate of formal votes can purge his candidacy of emotions pressed this night by violence on a nation's retina.
That's what I had. Humphrey, 3 votes for Senator McCarthy and 3 votes for Senator McGovern. That's what I had, 112. It's very interesting. It's just fun, you know, to check to see what you predict and what happens. 26.
Pennsylvania cast 2 1/2 votes for Senator McGovern, 21 1/2 votes for Senator McCarthy, and 103 3/4.
Look at how pretty she looks. Yeah, there, just... I'm going to give her a big kiss.
Publicly, Humphrey must force a smile. But none know better than the candidate how wounded and divided, how crippled is the party he hoped to lead to victory. Nixon chooses Chicago to open his assault on Humphrey in September. There, where only 1 week earlier streets and parks were battleground, the Republican draws 400,000 people. A triumphal first week carries him from Chicago to San Francisco and back across the land. Buoyant, wherever he campaigns, he underscores his message.
My friends, let me make one thing clear. This is a nation of laws, and as Abraham Lincoln has said, no one is above the law, no one is below the law, and we're going to enforce the law, and Americans should remember that if we're going to have law and order.
Nixon leaps ahead as leader, yet gradually his campaign, like Humphrey's, is shadowed by a new intruder. This man, George Wallace, has slowly swollen from local demagogue to political nightmare. He fears not only rebellious blacks, but all who seek to change the past. His answer for protesting students?
So I want to tell you young folks here tonight that when I become your president and you lie down in front of my automobile, you're not going to lie down in front of any more automobiles, I can tell you that.
Viewed up to now only as a Southern figurine, Wallace proves his racist style can stab at hearts much farther north and west. Shrewd, plain-spoken, he talks a language white working men can understand. Disturbed by violence, worried by black demands, they feel their concerns have been ignored by other politicians. George says it like it is.
They have never paid any attention to the aspirations of the average man on the street, to the oil worker, the shipyard worker, the auto worker, the communication worker, the little businessman, and the white-collar worker. They've said, no, we're going to bust your children. No, we're going to tell you who you can sell your property to.
His growing strength takes votes from Humphrey in the north, from Nixon in the south. Politicians begin to ask, can these votes carry enough states to deny the major candidates a clear electoral majority? As September nears its end, polling computers show Nixon's lead is steady, but he cannot push it to majority. Humphrey is at disaster ebb. Wallace' strength is soaring. At his Minnesota cabin, Humphrey knows that peril threatens. His first problem is to pull together his shredded party. His gloomy aides report old friends have deserted. Polling results discourage contributors. He has no money for television or radio time. And as he travels, embittered and intolerant students gather in the streets to break up meetings. Jeered, booed, denied the fundamental right of free speech by mobs, harassed, intimidated, he travels from Boston to Seattle.
I believe the Republican candidate owes it to the people to come out of the shadows. Would you mind bringing your television camera down here? You fellows do an awful lot to promote that with that camera. Now, come on down here, will you, Paul? Will you please now? Will you? Knock it off, will you, please?
Depressed, he knows he is portrayed as Lyndon Johnson's puppet. Taunted as warmonger, he must position himself as spokesman of peace. Salt Lake City, Monday, September 30th. The crowds that day are few and apathetic. But his staff has finally found the money to buy him television time. A larger audience waits. He plans to tell the nation that he is breaking with the party platform and the president on conduct of the war.
As president, I would stop the bombing of the North as an acceptable risk for peace, because I believe it could lead to success in the negotiations and thereby shorten the war.
In days, the Harris poll reports the first slight shift. In his first October week, Wallace chooses General LeMay to be his running mate. LeMay frightens people.
If I found it necessary, I would use anything that we could dream up. Anything that we could dream up, including nuclear weapons, if it was necessary.
Colonel Wallace? Well, of course, what you're doing, Mr. Nelson, is typical of the Los Angeles Times, as you're trying...
The choice of LeMay accentuates the shift toward Humphrey and his newly phrased peace stand. Up to now, the main artillery of the Nixon campaign has been fired from such studios to reach voters in their homes. Heavily financed, Nixon's media experts learned their technique in spring primaries in New Hampshire and Oregon, carving and showing a quiet man in cool, calm discourses shaped in studios.
What will you do if North Vietnam walks out of the Paris talks?
There'd be applause at the top of this scene, and cut it in and see how it looks, okay?
Take it from the top?
Yeah. In other words, not the original.
Right after his...
Right, as soon as the applause starts. As soon as the applause starts. Well, he's not saying anything.
The best president of the United States. That's the kind of man I want.
But now, aboard his plane, reports to Nixon also tell of shifting sentiment. His men have planned what they call a low-profile campaign, designed to heal the rifts that split the nation. He is trapped. He will not compete with Wallace, nor denounce Democrats for the war.
If a bombing pause can be agreed to, one which will not endanger American lives, and one which will increase the chances for bringing a peaceful and honorable solution to the war, then we are for it. And the one man who can make that determination is the President of the United States. Let's let him make that determination, and if he makes it, we will support him, because we want peace, and we do not want to play politics with peace.
Now, in late October, the White House interrupts the campaign with other news. At last, a major step to peace is imminent.
I have now ordered that all air, naval, and artillery bombardment of North Vietnam cease.
The Harris poll reports this hope of peace has given jet assist to Humphrey, and now he pours it on.
Who can you trust to hold this wonderful country of ours together as one people and one nation? And who can lead this country forward? I think you know the answer.
Unions marshal working men. win them back from racist Wallace to Humphrey, Labor's longtime friend. Black voters, hating Wallace, distrusting Nixon, now realize their choice can only be the vice president.
Why, they said he's got it all tied up. It's in the bag. But ladies and gentlemen, when he opens that bag on November 5th, out will jump Humphrey and Muskie.
Now, with the choice a toss-up, the candidates crisscross the country in their final round. Wallace has the South, Nixon the Midwest. Humphrey is strongest in industrial states. New York is lost to Nixon, but Illinois, Missouri, Texas, California, these states are question marks. A tiny shift in votes will swing them either way, and swing the presidency too. The final Sunday. All polls agree. Nixon's lead has vanished. This election is too close to call. Election Day. Ceremony attends him as Nixon departs Los Angeles for New York. He shows the customary smile of politicians, but in the privacy of his command plane, his thoughts are somber. As he takes off, 73 million people have begun to vote. Beneath his plane, Americans choose a president by ancient laws, not individually, but grouped in states. Each state assigned a fixed electoral vote, winner take all. The system works when two men clash and one alone can win. This year, the intruder threatens. If Wallace carries any substantial number of southern states, neither Nixon nor Humphrey can net the hard 270 electoral votes to win. As Nixon reaches New York by dusk, the mystery of choice is peaking. He and Humphrey run tonight, not only against each other, but in a numbers game that antique rules have set. As Nixon shelters at the Waldorf Towers, television begins to read the count. At 7, the antennae of network studios begin to trace an early profile. Such early returns are generally Republican, and Nixon, as expected, leads. Wallace is scoring in the South, but in the farm and border states, the Nixon strategy works. In Minneapolis, Humphrey headquarters waits for eastern state results to show where Humphrey's last month surge has reached. And shortly after 8, as the big cities pour in countervotes for Humphrey, Nixon's lead evaporates.
I think before the morning is out, Hubert Humphrey will be the next president of the United States.
With Humphrey now ahead at midnight, Nixon's staff men in New York scrutinize the totals. They hope that small-town, rural, western votes will reverse the fluctuating margin.
You see that Nixon has closed a little bit in the last few tabulations there.
Slowly, in Minneapolis, reality seeps in on Humphrey's staff men. However close the popular vote, the electoral votes which make a president show Nixon firmly out ahead.
16% with 7.5 million. And there have been no changes. None of those big states have fallen yet that the ones we are waiting for. And Nixon has 175 electoral votes to Humphrey's 153.
Humphrey reads the facts. He himself cannot win the electoral vote. But if Nixon gains no clear majority, the choice of president must go to Congress. He urges hope.
Now, there are critical states yet to be heard from. They're not finalized as yet. States such as Ohio, Illinois.
By early morning, as a drowsy nation wakes, Humphrey and Nixon are neck and neck in California, Texas, Illinois. Humphrey needs all their electoral votes. Nixon needs the votes of only one.
With the 26 electoral votes in Illinois, Richard Nixon goes over the top with 287 electoral votes. He needed 270 to win, and that seems to be the 1968 election.
Next morning, the president-elect descends to face his countrymen. Split, divided, they hear the goal he seeks to give to power.
I saw many signs in this campaign. Some of them were not friendly. Some were very friendly. But the one that touched me the most was one that I saw in Deshler, Ohio, at the end of a long day of whistle stopping. A teenager held up the sign, "Bring us together." And that will be the great objective of this administration at the outset, to bring the American people together.
He leaves to face a crisis as grave as any American history has offered any incoming president. The sterile digits of his narrow victory are meaningless until he gives them meaning by his deeds. In a moment, the conclusion.
The year began with the grotesque and ended with the grotesque. Politicians divide elections into landslides and squeakers, but 1968 was both at once. The Republicans won by a squeaker, yet the Democrats lost by a landslide. Only twice before in this century, in 1920 and 1932, has the country turned around so sharply. But both those elections set the country in new directions. The landslide of 1968 was a negative one. It violently rejected the past, yet it gave no clear mandate for the future. Hate had stirred Americans. 10 million voted for George Wallace in total turnabout of spirit. Humphrey got only 43% to approve the party they had chosen so overwhelmingly 4 years before. And Nixon, who only barely edged out Humphrey. Without a clear mandate from the torn electorate, he would have to find his way alone, and no way of judging his course until he freed himself from war in Asia. That was his first task, and he saw it clear.
What kind of a nation we will be, what kind of a world we will live in, whether we shape the future in the image of our hopes, is ours to determine by our actions and our choices. The greatest honor history can bestow is the title of peacemaker. This honor now beckons America.
Flair and fanfare overlay the president's inaugural with momentary gaiety. He inherits power, however, with troubles too great for ceremony to sweep away. Once early in the year, he said that what America needed most was the lift of a driving dream again. Dreams built such cities as much as steel and concrete. Hope fueled the energies that raised them. Now, to untangle its stupendous energies, to clarify the dreams, America must wait till Richard Nixon, from Washington, makes the nation's purpose clear once more.